Edelman, Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM, AM 630. WMAL.
8:07 on the Morning Majority. Just want to say to those of you who are dying to talk about this Herman Cain story, the phone lines are open, and in a few minutes we'll be taking your calls, so you might want to weigh in. 1-888-630-WMAL. Get ready. 1-888-630-9625. You will have a chance to say your piece, and we're interested to hear what's on your mind. On that topic, it probably is a good time for us to turn to a Washington wise man. I'm not going to call him a wise guy because that's a whole different thing. Tony Blankley is on the line. Used to work for Newt Gingrich. He does public relations in this town right now. An all-around smart fellow. Tony, as you look at the Herman Cain story and event, the thing that's happening right now, do you think he's handling it properly?
No, it's very sad because he may well be an innocent man, but he sort of violated every possible rule of crisis management. He first rushes out with denials that are imminently going to have to be retracted. Now, tactically, there's nothing wrong with the denial that will only have to be contradicted 10 months from now. Bill Clinton denied Monica Lewinsky in January 21st of 1998, and he didn't have to contradict it until the fall. So that worked tactically. It wasn't ethical, but it worked practically. But with Cain, he made these flat denials and then had to backpedal. He didn't know anything about the proposal. What he should have done, and what everybody should do in these situations, whether the charges are false or partially true or true, is first take your breath, gather your resources internally as fast as you can, find out what you can authoritatively say that's useful to you, and then get that out, then build on that with more authoritative, accurate statements as soon as you can, never having to contradict what you said, building towards a satisfactory conclusion if you can. He's done it the other way around. Makes denials, has to retract them, can't remember, does remember, which is understandable. I mean, people forget a lot of stuff. None of us remember details of usually of a few weeks ago, let alone a decade and a half ago. So you look worse than you really are by making those assertions, and then someone reminds you, don't you remember we had that meeting, 10 years ago at 7 in the morning. Oh yeah. So, I feel bad for him because it's a tremendous candidacy that he has going, and this is he's maximizing the chance of this being very damaging. What about blaming the Perry camp without any real hard evidence? Just kind of, the guy that is working with Perry now used to be my guy, and he knew about it. Well, the best reason to criticize the person putting forth the accusation is because it would undermine the credibility of the accusation. That's the real advantage, if that exists. So, in other words, if a conservative is attacked by the media with inconclusive background information, you say, well, it's not reliable, and it's not because they always go after conservatives. So it's not only naming somebody, it's also undercutting the charge. With the Perry one, I don't know that they've undercut the charge. Yeah. They simply said that, which may be true, I have no idea. I mean, we know that one person with Chris Wilson, who you talked about in the previous hour, I don't know how closely connected he is. That if he is connected as described in the media, that's a pretty credible connection, and I think Mr. Cain has it's basically right. But that doesn't necessarily undercut the validity of the charge.
Exactly. It does seem at this point that no women are going to come forward and put their names to these accusations, which makes me think, had Cain had the story intact from day one, that by this point, when you can't put a name with it, we would be moving on from this story. What do you think about that? Yeah,
it's tricky. One, first of all, he knows, or perhaps he remembers what the facts really are. You don't want to go out and deny something, as I said, that may be contradictable pretty soon. So he has to assume that they're going to come forward with their information. Now, if they don't and they stay hidden, they could come out at any point. Somebody, some news organization could offer them an inducement. A Democratic or other political organization could offer to cover for whatever loss they'd make from the deal, and they could come forward. So I don't assume that they'll be, but the charge is out there enough that I don't think their mere anonymity, unfair as it is going to put the story away.
All right. Meanwhile, Newt Gingrich he's bobbing around, and he's still there. You were quick to point out when he first came on the scene and made some gaffes when it comes to Paul Ryan and the whole social experiment.
Yeah.
That you don't count necessarily Newt out at this point, and he has somewhat backed Herman Cain here. Meanwhile, his daughter wrote a column yesterday that a lot of people are talking about. The folklore has been, or there's always a story attached to Newt that a lot of conservatives didn't like, a lot of social conservatives didn't like, that he, handed divorce papers to his wife when she was in the hospital and getting treatment for cancer. And the daughter writes a column saying, that's not true at all. I just want to get your take on that, especially since you know Newt so well.
I had to deal with that story, back when I was working for Newt in the early 90s. It was originally launched by Mother Jones magazine, a very left-wing magazine, and it was picked up by all the other media and reported as if true. And I wasn't there. I didn't even know Newt at the time. But the best evidence that Newt was telling the truth, which was that she had got cancer, I believe, before they announced that they decided to get divorced, and then she got cancer, and then at some point as she was recovering, she said, we might as well get the paperwork done, and he came in and they got the paperwork done. And later on it was characterized that he served papers on her while when she was dying of cancer. Well, thank God she's still alive and thriving. The best evidence I had at the time was that both of their daughters, who were grown up, supported Newt's side of the story. And we've all seen in life a lot of messy divorces, and very, very often the daughters side with the mother. Mm-hmm. And when both the daughters side with the father, that's at least suggestive evidence that he's telling the truth about what is obviously a difficult family situation. And so, I think having that story put to rest goes a long way to getting rid of what's called the baggage. Because, as you say, talking about Newt's campaign, I knew that Newt wasn't going to give up, because I worked with him 14 hours a day for 7 years, and this was one of the most determined, courageous men. I mean, he'd get beat up every day in the media in the early 90s, and we kind of review our bidding in the evening, and the next morning I'd pick him up at 6:30 to go up and do media, and he was cheerful and ready to go at it again. He did it every day. He's not a man to be defeated just because people punch him in the nose.
All right.
And so I expected to see him coming back. He is coming back. He's still got a ways to go, but I think he's got a reasonable chance of being the next one to be considered the alternative to Romney.
All right. Tony Blankley, always good to have you here on the Morning Majority.
Great to be here.